This is Carrie Kampakis, and you're listening to the Girl Mom Podcast. Today's show is a topic that people have a lot of thoughts and opinions about. In any big setting of life, people will branch off into groups. It is human nature, and we see it happen organically everywhere, from family relationships, where you might have 2 or 3 of the kids end up tighter with each other than they are the rest of the siblings because they're the most alike, to churches, where they have small groups formed for every situation under the sun. It is natural to take a big group and sometimes make a smaller group. A group isn't a bad thing when it's life-giving and God-honoring. Even Jesus had a group of his most trusted friends and the 12 disciples he chose. One huge problem that I see is that today's kids and teenagers face adult-sized problems, yet they don't always have a strong support system in place. They don't have a tight family unit or a tight friend group to walk with them, and that is what makes their pain feel unbearable. I truly believe that we can survive any trial in life with God and the right people by our side. As Tim Keller wrote in his book on marriage, marriage provides a profound shock absorber that helps you navigate disappointments, illnesses, and other difficulties. You recover your equilibrium faster. In my opinion, all good relationships act as shock absorbers for pain. They help us recover our equilibrium faster. We were made to live in community and to have deep and intimate relationships that make us stronger together than we are alone. But, as we all know, not all friend groups are healthy. Some groups are so cliquey and exclusive that they operate like a gang. No one comes in, no one goes out, and no one defies the leader. Some groups make you feel lonely even when you are surrounded by people. When I was in high school, we all had friend groups, but we still hung out with other people in other groups. We could mingle, and it was fluid, and we liked each other even though we weren't the best of friends. We respected each other's closest friendships, and I can still recall many BFFs whose friendships I really admired. It's an interesting topic, and I'm glad to have Kim Anderson, my Nashville counselor friend, back on the show to help me unpack this topic and shed more light on what a healthy and life-giving friend group looks like. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave a 5-star review wherever you listen and share this episode with friends. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. Well, Kim, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this subject because I know it's something that people can feel very passionate about one way or the other. So I'd love to hear what you think as a counselor about, is it bad to have a friend group, for our children to have their own friend group?
Yeah. So it's so important to have a friend group. Just like you mentioned, friend groups are shock absorbers. And we need to know that we're connected to other people and that we have community, right? We're not meant to do life alone. And God created relationships because he knew that it was good for our soul and good for our nervous system and good for our body. In fact, there's a study out of the University of Virginia where neuroscientist Dr. Cohn, he did research on patients going in to do an MRI and was telling the patients that they would be shocked while they were doing this MRI. And the difference in our brain, what registered between patients who were going in, not knowing if when the shock was going to happen, that went in alone, versus those who went in with somebody holding their hand.
Oh, wow.
Versus going into the MRI machine with their spouse holding their hand. It registered so differently in their brains. And so there's just so much research out there.
So which one registered the best? The one with the spouse?
The one with the spouse.
Interesting.
Right?
Even more than just a friend or something.
Even more than just a friend,
wow.
right? And
that's so good.
The safety in our brain increases significantly when we have somebody holding our hand, and even more when it's a loved one. And so that's why we need friend groups, right? The challenge is, in today's world, like we talked about in our last episode, friend groups can be so much trickier to navigate, especially for teens and tweens in this world where they're seeing friend groups gathering and they're not a part of it. And so friend groups can bring a lot of pain to people as well.
Yes. And I think sometimes I feel like I've seen this happen, that people feel pain from a friend group, even though they're not close with anybody in the group, but they just envy what that group has.
Yeah.
They see them laughing and having fun together, and it's just, I think we're all built for that. We all want that, and we all can have that. But it is hard, like teaching your child, like it's okay to have your best friends, but, if you're if you and your best friends are talking about going to lunch, it shouldn't be that if somebody's standing right there with you, that you should be able to invite them to come with you. Your friend group should not be upset if somebody new, if you invite somebody new, or, hey, she's new in town, I'd love for her to meet y'all. I think that's what we have to talk about with our children, is what does a healthy friend group look like? And like I said, it was different when I was growing up. Maybe it was my high school, but we had fun. I mean, we had our best friends. I mean, I had a big circle of good friends, but then I had a tighter circle of like my very best friends, and we spent the night together all the time. It was very fluid, but if we went to a party, we would hang out with other people that were in a different friend group, but we still enjoyed their company, and vice versa. And then, you grow up and you realize that sometimes those become your good friends, those acquaintances and those people in different friend groups. But talk a little bit about that, about how can we help our children decide if a friend group is safe and healthy for them?
So there are really three ways that when we were talking about it that we came up with that we need to, just help our kids navigate. And the first one is, are they a safe and healthy group of friends? And so when I'm working with teenagers in my office, I ask them to describe what safe friends look like. And it's so easy for them to rattle off. They're trustworthy, they're kind, they're encouraging, they're non-judgmental, they're inclusive, they're secure in who they are, so they're not jealous of other people, right? And then I ask them to describe what they think unsafe friends look like. And often they sigh because they're aware that they might be in the unsafe friend group, right? And so with that, they gossip, they don't listen, they're absorbed in their own life, they're always on their phones, they are exclusive, they intentionally exclude, and they talk about each other when they're not there, right? So there's this feeling, if I'm not there, then I know that I'm going to be the topic of discussion. And they show jealousy, right? They're not encouraging each other. And so it's so important that kids have clarity about what safe friends look like and what safe friends don't look like. And we need to model that as moms in our relationships. They need to see what healthy friendships look like and how we build each other up and how we encourage each other. And somebody else's win is not a threat to us and to our own ego or self-esteem. But it's not often modeled, unfortunately.
Yes. And I think it's good for our kids to see too. Like I have different friend groups. Like for each child, I have a different group of moms. They're like, and a lot of times it's their best friends' moms that I'm like, and I love, like when we'll do birthday dinners. I'm like, okay, I'm going to dinner with Marie Claire's, my friends who have kids Marie Claire's age. Those are my junior moms, and another one, my college moms, and my 8th grade mom friends. And it's, or my Kappa friends back from college, or my high school friends. Like, it's kind of fun to have different groups that you get together with. And I think what makes a group special is that there's always a unique dynamic. And C.S. Lewis talked about this in one of his books that I loved, talked about how the beauty of friendship, it's about, basically how, Kim, I love you. I think you're so amazing. And if I introduced you to some of my friends here in Birmingham, it's going to make me so happy when I see these two friends connect. And I'm going to learn more about you by watching you interact with this other friend who's going to bring out a side of you that I haven't seen because I haven't seen it be triggered. And so he was talking about, so like when you lose a friend, that's what makes it so hard. You're not only missing your relationship with that person, you're missing what Joanna brought out in Kim. You're missing that side of Kim that these other people, these other friendships brought out. And I think that's what's so fun about a friend group, is that you have this dynamic and everybody has their little role. And even as my kids kind of started growing up and we were in the car and we'd have these fun conversations, like there were so many times I'm thinking in my head, I was like, I feel like I'm back in college. I'm with my friend group. And like, you got the one who just said the sassy little comment and the one who just, they're different personalities in the group dynamic. It's fun, and it takes relationships to a whole new level. But I think that, when you do have a healthy friend group, everybody feels, like you said, secure, you feel supported, and you feel like you can handle those trials that you're going through because you've got people who have your back.
Really, it's like addition instead of subtraction, right?
Yes.
In a healthy friend group, addition's a beauty. There's synergy, there's joy, you're learning about each other. There's not this feeling of scarcity, right? Like if you're hanging out with, Susie, then I'm losing. Right? It's like we all get to have multiple friendships and multiple layers, and there's just a beauty in that. And there's not a possessiveness.
Yes.
Right.
And don't you remember too, like some of my favorite memories of just like when all of my friends were getting married? Like I think this shows, I feel like my best friends, I feel like they chose their friends well. And one of my favorite things was when I was in a wedding and I got to meet all their best friends. Because, if you get married in your 20s, later 20s especially, they've got friends from work and they have certain friends from college and certain friends from high school. And it was always so fun to see, okay, what's going to be our wedding dynamic for this weekend? And it starts usually at the bridesmaid luncheon or whenever you get in town, and then you have the rehearsal dinner that night. And then by the time you get to the wedding and you're doing the practice and all of that, like you're really tight with these other bridesmaids or groomsmen, and there's its own unique dynamic. But, there were so many times that I'm like, oh, I see why Greta loves her. I love her too. And you become friends with their friend. And I think that's so neat when you have created this friend group that is welcoming enough to an outsider, especially, if you are a bridesmaid, sometimes you're walking into a situation where these girls were all college sorority sisters or best friends in college, but yet a healthy friend group is going to make that outsider feel welcome and like she's one of them too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And another part of that, I think it's hard for kids today. I think part of the reason I think kids get really protective of their friend group is because they have lost the art and the skill of talking to each other and conversing with each other. They're missing so many communication skills and relationship skills. And so when they find it, there's a lot of fear about losing it. And so the more that we can help our kids know how to move through and with different friendships, the more equipped they're going to be.
Yes, I agree. And our second point about how to know if it's healthy is to ask if your friend group is a circle or a horseshoe. Let's talk a minute about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my favorite go-to books for friend group discussion is Queen Bees and Wannabes by Rosalind Wiseman. That's actually the book that the movie Mean Girls is based off of. And what the author talks about is just the way that that teen friend groups kind of operate like in these rafts. And on each raft, you've got a queen bee who's the leader, and then you've got the henchman who's right beneath her, and then you move down the line in order of rank and power. And really, girls this age in middle school and high school, they'll do anything to have a seat on the raft, even if it means being at the bottom of the totem pole, because it's so much safer to be at the bottom of the totem pole, right, to have the last seat on the raft than it is to be swimming in the water without a life vest. And so we want to help our girls figure out, is she on a raft that's a closed circle, maybe with toxic girls, right, with no room to move in or out of the raft? Or is she more in a horseshoe where people can come and join on the raft? Because really the horseshoe is exactly what you're describing when you're talking about wedding parties and, meeting friends from high school and college and then their friends. It's everybody's welcome. People are welcome to come and go. And if you move to another seat at the lunch table or you move to another raft, it's not a catastrophic or the end of the world.
I love that. That's such a good visual too. And it makes me think, I'm trying to think the analogy here, but we had a friend, one of Harry's friends, his parents had a house that had just been a little neglected because one of his parents had passed away, and so they had moved somewhere else. But anyway, they got a call from the neighbors one day that there were bees in the house. So he was laughing about, because apparently if you call, there's some company you can call, like there were beehives in the house. And there were beehives in one of the trees outside the house. So that's how the neighbors saw the bees in this beehive outside the house. And so anyway, he's like, but the crazy thing is that you will call these beekeepers or whatever, and they will like race to get over there. Everybody wants to be the first one to get those bees, and they will have almost like a vacuum thing that they will suck the bees in, and then they can go produce honey and sell it and all that. But he was talking about how when they were at the tree, it was crazy because at first it was chaos, but it was like organized chaos, like the bees were buzzing. But then they said, like, if once we get the queen bee, once we suck in the queen bee, you will know it because it'll be mass chaos. And so he's like, you could see exactly when it happened because it was like they were almost like buzzing in alignment. And then once they got that queen bee, it was like all hell broke loose. Anyway, it just sounds like that's kind of the same thing here, like probably in an unhealthy friend group, like that is how it works. Something happens to the queen bee, everything's depending on her. Everything depends on her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's not healthy.
Yeah. So you want to just kind of be observing the friend group that your kids are in. And there'll always be a queen bee, but the queen bee can be a beautiful queen bee. She can be a faith-filled, positive leader that's encouraging, right? And so just making sure that they are not feeling like they are getting pushed off and into the water and drowning, because a lot of times we'll see anxiety coming out of them and not know why.
Right.
But it could be because they're in that position where they're just feeling like everything is resting on staying on that raft no matter what.
Yes. And that's what I just spoke to some middle schoolers recently, and that's what I told them. I was like, whatever power you have, use your power for good. And that's just something these kids can't hear enough. Like, use your power for good in your sphere of influence.
Well, and some girls are just born to be leaders, right? They just come out as leaders, and so naturally they just fall into that position. And so just like you said, when you're using that for good, then beauty will come out of it.
Yes. And that really, I talked about this too, that really, if you look at every class has its own dynamic, and that's usually what shapes the class dynamic, is what are the people at the top, the people with the most power, what culture are they creating? And Harry had an uncle who used to say the fish stinks from the head down. Basically, like, if there's issues, and I'm like, it's true. If you look at a grade that has a lot of bullying or tight cliques or gangs, groups, friend groups operating like gangs, like, it's probably trickling down from the top, what the people with the most power are doing, and it's setting the culture for everybody. But if you have people at the top who are kind and friendly and warm and genuine, it creates a better climate for everybody. It trickles down, and that's what sets the tone. And then the last thing we can do as parents to help our children with the reality that a lot of girls and guys fall into friend groups these days is to make sure that they're planting seeds with multiple friend groups. And we talked about this in the last episode. I'm like, moms, if you only remember one thing to tell your children, tell them, cast a wide net by being kind to everybody. Don't paint yourself into a corner by only being tight or friendly or kind to your little small friend group, because things change and friendships can be very fluid, especially in middle school and sometimes high school too. And, how things are today is not how they'll always be. But if your child has been planting seeds in other places and making other friends beyond their friend group, then they're going to have a place to go if something doesn't go well in their friend group, or if they start making decisions that they don't really agree with and they need to leave that group, they're not going to feel like they're stranded because they've got other places to go.
It's true. I mean, we talked about in the last episode as well, like, their brain can only handle 5 close friends at a time. And so we just, again, need to normalize with our kids that it is not personal when other people are closer to each other. You just can't be everybody's favorite Chick-fil-A sauce, right? You just can't. And so it's okay if that's not the case. But when we're planting seeds, when we're invested in a lot of places, then when the raft starts to get shaky, or when they get pushed off unexpectedly, it doesn't become so catastrophic.
Yes.
And I just want to say really quickly too, a lot of times I work with clients who maybe are extroverts and miss the fact that their friends, the friends that they would like to be hanging out with, are more introverted and just need a few close friends and just want to go to dinner with 1 or 2 people because a larger group overwhelms them.
That's good.
And so digging into personalities and into understanding how your friends are wired is such a helpful thing.
Yeah, and even for moms too, because I know moms who, they're very social and they're very extroverted and they will never miss a party, but their daughter is perfectly content, or their son is perfectly content staying home most weekends, going to dinner with 1 or 2 friends, and they don't have a big friend group, and that is okay too. It really is, it's really about what's bringing fulfillment to your child, and just them having people in their life who just build them up and help them live out their purpose that God has given them.
Absolutely.
And the last thing I want to mention here too, and I've heard a counselor say this, that, sometimes girls just, or maybe they're going to a new school, or they don't have a place, and they just want to get into a certain group, but, if you've got a group, it's kind of like when I moved to Huntsville as a newlywed, I'm like, I'm not going to automatically be best friends with these girls who have a 30-year history together, and when they were 2 years old, they were taking baths together, and their moms, carried them in the womb together. Like, you just can't compete with those friendships. Sometimes there's a tightness to a group. And so rather than trying to get into a group, it's so much better and healthier to think smaller, just build one-on-one relationships, instead of I just want to get my foot in the door over with that group, just say, who are, 2 or 3 people that I really like? Who could I invite to go on a walk or see if they want to meet for coffee, and just start building those one-on-one relationships. And that's actually what I did in Huntsville. I had the friends, I had my friends in my supper clubs, but a lot of them, I'm like, they had their best friends and they really didn't need another best friend. They were sweet to me, but nobody needed a friend like I did. And so I started with just one friend here and one friend here. And by the time we left 4 years later, we had the best friend group. I mean, we were so tight, husbands and wives. We did, we were together every weekend, and we were so sad to leave them. But it started with me and my friend Mary Alice. It was just the two of us at first. She had just moved back to town. And then from there, we had some other friends that moved to town. And we just really developed a great friend group from there. So don't get discouraged and, or feel like if you're not a part of a group that you can't build community, because we all have the power to create our own community. It might be 10 people, it might be 2 people, but it's, God knows what we need, and He knows what our children need too.
Yeah, and helping our kids navigate friend groups really just starts with us. And again, like we talked about in the last episode, our approach to it, the way that we shape it and frame it within our household. We can always reach out and find new people to invest in. And we just need to keep our focus on who is Lord putting in our path and what can we do to connect with them.
Yes, I love that. Well, thank you, Kim, for another great conversation. Again, I think this one is so relevant to moms today and to girls today. And I'm hoping that anyone listening, that this will give you a little hope for wherever your daughter is in her friendships. And just know that we're praying for you, praying for your daughter, and praying that not that she has the biggest circle of friends possible, but that she has the right friends in her life that God wants to navigate this journey with her. Friends, thank you for tuning in today. I am so grateful to have you here. And if you enjoy this show, please subscribe wherever you listen and leave a ratings or review so that other people can find these messages too. For links to my books, my social media, and my new community on Substack, check out the show links. Thanks again for your support, and have a great day.